Привіт! I'm Chuck Olinik, a Ukrainian American. I was baptized with the name Yaroslav, and that's the name that I go by in the Society for Creative Anachronism, where I'm known as Kir Yaroslav the Persistent. Most folks call me Yari. I didn't think I'd be doing a video on Sickles and Scythes under my title, Tales of the Borderland. Then I stumbled across folklore surrounding these agricultural tools in Eastern Europe. And that jogged a memory of me teaching, and how sometimes we assume everybody gets it when you make a reference to folklore or to something part of the culture. What if you or your parents weren't raised in this particular culture? So you have to kind of indulge me for a moment. Back when I was teaching world history, I was covering the agricultural revolution as part of the Industrial Revolution. And I was teaching in South Central LA and Boyle Heights, which for most of you would probably be East LA. And I mentioned the horse-drawn reaper, and what I got were blank looks. Okay, you're using this tool called a scythe. You're harvesting the wheat with this, swinging this sharp blade to mow the crop down. So reaping is basically harvesting. I got blank looks. The expression that I call fish in an aquarium, where they just kind of and stared at me and didn't quite get it. So I had to go a bit deeper. Okay, who's the Grim Reaper? A loud chorus of, it's Death, he's Death. Why is he carrying a scythe? It's a tool for harvesting. What's he harvesting? We are the crop. The Grim Reaper is harvesting us. That's why he's carrying a scythe. And that lesson taught me that when it comes to folklore, if you're not familiar with everything in the culture, you miss a lot. Okay, so now, in that same light, we're going to take a look at the scythe and the scythe's baby brother, the sickle, in Eastern Europe. In agriculture, the sickle was used by farmers to cut grain when it was ripe. My mom used it, or used one back in Ukraine for cutting flax to then turn into linen. That was considered a really dangerous process. One wrong move, and you could get an injury, which is probably why when I was 5 years old and I was found by my dad running around the farmyard playing with the scythe, I got a good strong spanking. And then when my mom found me running around with a sickle, shortly afterwards, there was another spanking. I was a slow learner. Russians believed that wearing special harvest time shirts that had sleeves made entirely of red cloth would protect their arms from injury. I know there's a joke in there about brown pants. Brown tunic. Okay. Women also took along with them a special charm doll called a Pokosnitsa, harvest time doll. This doll was made of cloth, and red threads were wrapped around the arms for protection. This doll was also given to children, to small children, while the parents are out in the field, to give them something to do while the parents are working in the field. That's going to connect with another Slavic spirit, Poludnica or Poldunica, a field spirit who goes by a lot of different names like everyone else in Slavic lore. Since her name has its root in the word midday, she's called Lady Midday, or the Noon Wraith, or Noon Witch, or just plain Noon. In Western Slavic lands, she might be called the Lady of the Rye or the Cornflower Wraith. Roaming the fields in the heat of the midday, carrying a scythe or a sickle or shears, Poludnitsa's got a number of pet peeves, such as straying children, and she would make children disappear when they went searching for flowers in amongst the tall grain plants on hot summer's day, and she'd basically make them dance nonstop until evening. She was useful in scaring children away from the valuable crops. which is also, they're also being harvested by their parents swinging sharp metal. Poludnica is not the only one. The Poles call this one Marzana, while Morana is her name in Slovenia, Serbia, and Croatia, Morava, More in Lithuania, Morena or Morana in Slovakia and Macedonia, Mora in Bulgaria. The Rus called her Marena. Ukrainians and Czechs called her Mara. That's what I'm going to call her. She's the goddess of winter, more specifically winter's death, and is seen as the bringer of death. Sometimes she's associated with the night. In some Slavic tribes, she's also the goddess of unhappiness in love, which is really oddly specific to me. Her name is based on the Slavic root mor, used in words like such as confusion, peril, nightmare, death, plague, fun stuff. So perhaps she's also the bringer of nightmares. After all, if you're associated with death, why not nightmares too? In ritual magic, a sickle is associated with Mara, or Morana or Morena, the goddess of winter and death. Ritual sickles are traditionally dedicated to her, the dark goddess before whom everything living is powerless. I didn't think that the scythe or the sickle would be connected to fish, but a sharp scythe and a crescent sickle that cuts grass and grains are sometimes compared to the most famous predator amongst all the local fish, the northern pike. A greedy pike swished its tail, and the forests fell, mountains stood up. So basically, the scythe swings its tail, the blade cuts things, the forest, which is grass, fall, mountains or haystacks stand up. And there's another one. As the pike attacks, the whole forest wilts. So the sickle attacks, the field wilts. So sickles and scythes, as well as axes and knives and needles and even pins, in folk imagination, they possess properties such as protection of a person or of a household against evil, as well as magical attack. For protection of the house against evil spirits and ill-wishing people, you might take a sharp object such as a knife, an axe, a sickle, a needle, or even a pin, and place it under the threshold or stick it in the upper corner of the door frame. And that was supposed to ward off bad stuff. For protection of the windows, it might be placed on the windowsill. Right. Knife-like objects could also be used to trace protective symbols. So maybe you could even use a sickle to carve a cross on a door or a window or a wall or floors and ceilings, for that protection. Belarusian and Ukrainian farmers, they practiced a type of ritual where if they believed that a cow was hexed, they would strain the milk over a sickle for protection from witchcraft and also to remove the hex. And so maybe it'd be like placed under the strainer. And the phrase that was used that I read was to cut the witch's tongue, to basically end the curse and stop the witch from magically stealing the cow's milk. Another way folklore used to remove a hex was to heat up wax, melt it, and you hold a sickle and the blade, the edge is up, and you pour this over the blade, down into a bowl of water, and that was also supposed to cut the witch's tongue. So looking at those images of Slavic goddesses or spirits, running around with a scythe or a sickle, yeah, not really so comforting, right? It kind of becomes like a symbol of death. Well, sometimes an image of a sickle would be engraved on graveyard markers and memorial structures. Sickles and knives were found in burials in ancient Rus, and they were stuck in the ashes in the funerary pyre or in the urn with the ashes. When people started getting buried under the ground, a knife or a sickle was stuck in the bottom of the grave. And that brings us to vampire stuff. This isn't going to be a whole big review on vampires, just dealing with like one in particular. Researchers nicknamed this woman Zosia. Her remains were discovered in 2022 in an unmarked 17th century cemetery near Pien, Poland. A silk headdress was found in the grave, and that suggests she was from somebody important. Maybe she was like from a wealthy or socially important family. And the analysis suggests she was about 18 or 20 years old when she died. But archaeologists found, okay, triangular padlock attached near her foot. Okay, that's not the important part for me. They found an iron sickle positioned across her neck. These objects are not ordinary burial decorations. From the looks of things, they appear to have been placed there to prevent her from rising from the grave. Other Slavic cultures used sharp iron or steel objects in a similar manner. A sickle with a handle made of oak or of ash was used to cut off vampires. See, there's that expression, cut off. Cut off vampires sucking energy from the human body. And even as late as like the 19th century, Macedonians were placing a sickle or a knife under a deceased person's head so that he or she wouldn't become a vampire and rise up from the grave. So, more spooky stuff. And I guess this is to give you a little context into when you see images of Poludnitsa or of Mara or Morena or all the other names she goes by, these female spirits carrying sickles, you'll know what's going on. Okay, until the next time. Do pobacenia.